No more bye-week blues. Week 13 NFL action. Saints and Rams kicking off in the Caesars Superdome on Sunday. A 3:05 start, Jeff. We got to have to readjust our bodies. I feel like we're so used to being at the Superdome so early in the morning.
Yeah, what time does the pregame show even start for 3:05? At 11?
Yeah, 11 o'clock. So we'll be there
all morning.
We won't be there 8 a.m. We'll be there 11.
Yeah, maybe I'll just shout out on some leftovers. Maybe do you think that'll be like the Superdome's meal this week is like leftover turkey and stuff?
Everything left over from the entire season. We'll just throw it out there.
There you go. Yeah, how was your Thanksgiving? Did you have a good time? Was it everything your heart desired?
Yeah, and actually the football games were better than I thought they were going to be, except obviously the Dallas Giants game, not very interesting at all.
The Giants, I read this morning. The Giants will never play another entertaining football game in the rest of their franchise. That's actually been reported. It's gonna, they are just. It was so funny to me to watch the Giants try so hard, like they were treating Tommy Cutlets like he was like prime breeze, and like we're gonna see if we can get him out there. It's like it's a Thursday game. This guy's not good. Play the other guy that's not good. Why are we even conversating about this? Just don't play him if he can't play. Like, why is this a conversation? Oh, he's going to get an extra MRI and join the team late. Don't play him. You're going to lose either way. Stop wasting my time. Anyway, but yeah.
Secure that number one pick for crying out loud.
But they at least kept it a reasonably close game. It was it's one-score game. It's not like Caleb Williams just doing everything he can to not win a game. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But before we get into this podcast, I do want to play my favorite Thanksgiving football moment of all time. Here you go, without introduction.
Seit da übernommen hat, auch einen super guten Job macht. Er war der Headcoach bei den Raiders damals. Da sah es nicht so gut aus als Headcoach. Oh, Interception! Matt Ryan! Oh mein Gott! Wie eine Puppe gibt er ihn den Stiffer und er fliegt auf den Boden. Hör doch mal auf.
Never gets old.
How does that play get better when it's German play-by-play? Unbelievable.
I'll never forget that. I mean, I remember I'm the one who found that clip initially. Like, that's where that came from. And I remember waking up, like, I tweeted that at, like, I don't know, like 11:30, right before I went to bed. And I remember waking up and my phone was, like, hot. Like, it was just I think I retweeted like 6,000 times, something like that. But every Thanksgiving that I get notifications of like people find it again. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And it's always a good thing to wake up to. It's like it's like you watch Christmas Story on repeat on Christmas. That's
right.
Like, just play that. It's like, the background, like my background music. It's like interception.
Yeah, that was a stretch. The Saints had a couple Thanksgiving games, and that's when I was doing sideline. So I was missing out on family time for sure.
Yeah, I was talking to people about that yesterday. Like the Saints were like the de facto, like the NFL was trying to make the Saints basically the unofficial third Thanksgiving team for a little bit there.
Right.
And I hated it. It was miserable. Like that
Agreed.
day, I was working that day and I did not want to be working. Like I had Thanksgiving dinner with my wife's family because they were down visiting, and then I had to leave and go to work for that game. But at least we got that moment out of it because it was back-to-back years they played the Falcons, one in Atlanta, one here, and then they played the Bills. And I think they played so badly in that game against the Bills that the NFL was like, we're never doing this again.
All right. We've done enough of the Saints.
Yeah. Like you've lost this privilege. And I do remember I was on Bills radio at one point prior to that game, and they were asking me like, oh, the day before Thanksgiving, like a huge drinking day everywhere, right? Like, is it crazy in New Orleans? And I was like, no, it's like that. Every day is a crazy drinking day in New Orleans. Here, the day before Thanksgiving is just a day.
It's just Thanksgiving Eve, right? It's no big deal.
Like everyone's kind of resting up. I went to the Pelicans game and got that hat, which I apologize. I was originally planning on doing a podcast on Wednesday to break down the injury report. Then the injury report ended up being so short, and I was like, how do I do a whole podcast about this? And I was like, you know what? I'd rather go to a Pelicans game. So I went to a Pelicans game. So apologies that I didn't give you a podcast to listen to on Thanksgiving that no one would have listened to anyway.
So you went to a Pelicans game and got your heart injured.
I did. And now I have, it's not this hat, but it's just this hat with like, it's black and green. So I now have 3 different versions of this hat, which I need to just keep collecting them. And I feel like once I have the entire set, if they do it for like 10 years, if I have like all 10 of them, I could like put him somewhere.
What's the other color scheme besides that one and the city one?
It's the Mardi Gras one.
Oh, okay. There you go. I
I
like the uniforms for the Pellies. They just didn't look as good as the uniforms did.
This is the one from last year. It's the Mardi Gras hat.
Okay, gotcha.
And the new one is like black instead of brown. Anyway. But that's what I did on Wednesday. So that was my pre-Thanksgiving, was going to the worst basketball game of all time. So
correct.
I didn't enjoy it, if that makes you feel any better. So anyway, but this is a podcast that we're going to talk about. So, since we didn't do the injury report on Wednesday, we will do it today. There's really not that much to talk about. Well, we'll get into it in this first segment. We'll also talk about, a guy returning from injured reserve, which people are excited about, even though you might not think, hey, why would you be excited about this? There are some good reasons. Well, I also want to hear from Bobby Hebert, who was talking about Darren Rizzi. And this game coming up is really important for Darren. So I want to kind of dive into that. It's like to answer the question, is this the most important game of the Darren Rizzi interim coach era? Because I think it very well may be. So we'll dive into that. Second segment, we're going to have Greg Beacham, Rams reporter for the Associated Press. He also covers like 90 different teams out in L.A., so he's a busy guy. So I appreciate him coming on. A lot of good information in that interview. Final segment, we're going to break down X factors. I want to talk about sacks and not getting sacked and why that's important, and a few other topics. We heard from Darren Rizzi, talked about Taysom Hill's usage, all that good stuff. But all right, first off, Steve, what was the winner of your Thanksgiving plate before we move on?
Honestly, one of the cousins, is growing up now. He's at the age where he's driving. He made these brownies with Oreos and chocolate chip cookies in it. And I would say the sweet tooth definitely in me would say that was the best dish of the day. But my mother-in-law really cooks an amazing turkey. So looking forward to later on, at least grabbing some leftovers, making a big old sandwich.
Nice. Yeah, that's the problem. We didn't host or anything, so we didn't take any leftovers home, and I'm bummed. But the star of the table for us was called a holligator.
Okay.
You know what challah is, like challah bread?
Yeah.
It was just a gigantic loaf of bread in the shape of an alligator. And just tore
just
like legs and arms up. It was quite a thing. It at the end of the day, it was just bread, but it was a very fun bread.
Right.
But all right. Speaking of the staples of this Saints roster, we go into the injury report. There's really only one guy on there that you're looking at. There's two that did not practice either Wednesday or Thursday, but Thursday wasn't really a practice. It was an estimated injury report, so I don't know. But Erik McCoy did not practice on Tuesday, which was the first official practice of the week, but no injury report. Did not practice on Wednesday. When we talked to Darren Rizzi on Tuesday, he made it sound like, yeah, okay, it's just the first day. We started early, so we're not really making any decisions yet. We'll know more on Wednesday. Darren didn't talk on Wednesday because it was the assistant coach day, so we didn't get any more information from him. We didn't get any more information on Thursday, and we're recording this Friday morning before practice. So bear in mind as we talk about this could all change on Friday. If he gets out there for a limited practice, I think it's possible that Erik McCoy goes. Right. But when you're looking at a guy coming off a bye week, dealing with a similar injury to what he had surgery on, or at least like a re-aggravation of whatever he was dealing with, that's not a good sign. So I think all signs are trending to Erik McCoy not playing in week 13. And that's not good because you've had all this time to potentially get ready. So if you're not ready by Thursday, by Wednesday, going into this game, I have a hard time seeing suddenly on Friday, oh, he's available, he's going to play on Sunday. Because then you're just trying to push through the same injury that didn't work out last time. So we'll see. Either way, that's obviously a super negative thing for this team as it kind of looks at like, wow, we're finally getting back on track. We thought, getting Erik back is going to be this major influx for the offense. Maybe it still is, but right now it's definitely not looking positive.
Yeah, just because of obviously the guy that he is on the field. We talk about he's one of the best centers in the NFL, but the fact that definitely a team leader that guys are looking to, a voice that everybody kind of perks up and you pay attention to what McCoy's doing. Plus his involvement on the offensive line frees up Derek. So, to do a lot more at ease with the play calling in his hands.
Yeah, and it just, I think Clint Kubiak is a little bit more willing to open up things on the offense when Erik's in there versus when he's not. And so, we'll see. If he can't go, it'll be Shane Lemieux starting because Lucas Patrick obviously did not practice as well. He's still dealing with that ankle injury. I don't expect him to play. The only other guys on the injury report are, not significant, right? So you're talking about Pete Werner has a hand injury, but he was a full participant, so he's going to play. The only question is whether he still has a club on his hand on Sunday, or if his hand is healed well enough that he can just play with like a brace. Jamal Williams has been missing with a groin injury. He's been back in a limited capacity, so there's a chance you get him out there. Kendre Miller can't practice this week or play. His first game that he could potentially be back for would be week 14, so nothing from him yet. And then Foster Moreau is still listed on the injury report with a shoulder injury, limited participant. Don't expect that to be an issue. So, injuries aren't a huge problem for the Saints right now. It's just that one very significant player that you're just not sure about. But if there's a silver lining, it's that you've gotten pretty good at playing without him, right? It's not like this when you lost Erik McCoy and you had to go out there on week 4, you were like, well, what's it going to look like? Now you at least know what it's going to look like if he can't go out there. And I thought Shane Lemieux played pretty well in relief last week going in. You scored on 3 straight possessions after he went in the game. It's when you took over the game. So, and I thought he played pretty well in week 4 when he had to take over. Then he got hurt, obviously. So there's no more Connor McGovern. He's on the Jets now. So, it's going to be interesting to see. One guy who is back this week, I don't expect him to play, but he is back and is definitely an infusion of energy, is Tano Passanio, defensive end. He hasn't sniffed the field all year. He tore his Achilles during an off-season workout at the facility. But, when I think we've talked about this a little bit, Tano's been out there, and Darren joked about this too. Tano has been out there more than anybody I've seen. Every day we would go talk to, go to the press conference and you'd see Tano off to the side. Every day in Irvine, we'd be watching practice and Tano would be walking around the perimeter of the field in a weighted vest, doing anything he can. You would think that Tano is active all year based on how often you saw him at the facility. And that's just him doing a lot of hard work, and everyone sees that. So when he gets back, it's kind of an infusion of energy, and you can see that at practice. Everyone was super excited. They were cheering for him going through the drills. Darren went up to him, kind of patted him on the head, and hey, it's good to see you, man. Maybe that'll be kind of a shot in the arm for some of these guys who have been, it's week 14, it's week 13, you're tired, you've been working, you're hurt, you're aching. So you see a guy kind of battle through that, battle back. And that's cool to see. Nephi Sewell's another guy who did that. He got back against the Browns. He won the Ed Block Award that's voted on by the team for Redversity, going through adversity. So, it's you're watching, you're looking at teams suddenly this is a very healthy team right now if you ignore the wide receiver room. For the players that aren't on IR, this is a pretty healthy team right now. So hopefully they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, obviously the corner situation's a little different. Noah Debo obviously done for the year, and you traded away Marshawn, who is practicing finally with the Commanders, but that leaves the secondary situation a little uneasy. But health-wise, yeah, you're right. It's good to see most of the team, getting back. A guy like Tano, I love him as a rotational piece. Obviously, good for a couple sacks a season, but definitely adept at getting that pressure on the quarterback and speeding up that clock.
Yeah, Tano, he's a good inside-outside rusher. That's where I was impressed with him last year is on the interior, he was really effective. And you've kind of been using Peyton Turner and Cam in that role. I am curious to see if when Tano gets back, if he supplants Peyton Turner in that rotation. I would be surprised just because I think Peyton's been playing pretty well and he's been available. So you want to give him credit for that. But, if someone gets hurt down the stretch of the season, having him kind of waiting in the wings will be valuable if you're playing meaningful games late in the year. So,
you mentioned too, he's fresh. So he could be that whatever limited snaps he can provide will be that, that little shot to that D line.
Right. And you see him out there and you're like, why is this guy not first team all pro every year? He's a beast. He's huge. He look kind of like the Neil Hunter out there. And you're just wait, why isn't he better than he is? I don't know. But all right, let's kind of shift subjects here and start talking about the Rizz, the Rizzler.
Yeah.
Rizzler salad, if you will. I don't know where that came from, but I'm rolling with it. This is Bobby Hebert kind of talking about Darren and what Darren has to do the rest of the way and how he kind of feels about that situation as we head into the final 6 games of the season.
To me, the game right now on the Coach Rizzi that I'd be the most impressed with, now I don't think this would be like, whoa, that would have to catch the nation's attention. If we beat the Packers on Monday night, what is that, right before Christmas? I know it's going to be freaking
the
cold.
Monday before Christmas, because we're going to be at the Silver Slipper Tuesday for Christmas Eve.
And I'm thinking, no. The way I saw Green Bay, how they now San Francisco's not the San Francisco of old. That they didn't have Brock Purdy and all that, but it's still the 49ers. I said, I don't know. You get the Rams, I think that would be an upset. But to me, to beat the Packers, that would be a monumental upset right now. Now, Washington, look at the Giants, Raiders, and all that. And then, but what if this could come into play? I told Mike this, I think, last night, that the last game in the regular season, we playing at Tampa. That could be, from a significant standpoint, if Coach Rizzi wins, he has a great chance to keep his job. If he doesn't win, then he might have to go be a special teams coach somewhere else. Watch. I'm telling you how that's going to unfold. That last game against Tampa Bay is going to be very meaningful, particularly to Coach Rizzi, I think, because I think he's going to be in the hunt. I think Coach Rizzi is going to have the boys, going to have the players ready to go and to play, but it's going to be okay. That's a division opponent. And Tampa Bay's rolling right now. Boy, look at Baker Mayfield and how impressive. And all of a sudden, Chris Godwin's not going to be available.
But Mike Evans is back.
Right.
Yeah, so just watch how it's going to unfold. So, how can you not like Coach Rizzi? I mean, come on.
Okay, a couple things. One, I am not willing to give the Bucs the title of rolling right now. They lost 4 games in a row and then beat the Giants, who probably, I think I said last week, will not win another game all season. So they got the free space in bingo. So we'll see how they go from here. But either way, you're looking at a team that is trending in the right direction, getting some players back healthy. And yeah, they're going to be someone to contend with the rest of the way. But I can't look forward to that game as far as Coach Rizzi is concerned. I can't look forward to the Packers game because I view the Rams game personally as the most important game for Darren in his interim coach standard when it comes to okay, we're considering keeping this guy for a job, right? We're considering keeping him on as the full-time head coach. And why is that? Well, if you look at it and you say, yeah, the Packers game is probably going to be the most difficult to win, sure. But that's going to be the case whether he gets there at 4-0 or he gets there at 6-0 or whatever it is. It's going to be the case whether you win there or you lose to get there. But when you look at how interim head coaching stints go, look at Dan Campbell in 2015 with Miami. They won their first 2 games, right? Then they lost 4 of their next 5, right? So that kind of interim coach bump, we talk about that, the interim energy bump, it doesn't last forever, right? You have to eventually prove that you can just win a game as the head coach. And if you come out of a bye and you just look flat, you look like a team that's we were really relying on that kind of energy boost and now we don't have it. And we're back to being the Saints that, kind of fall down in these big moments. Then that says a hell of a lot more than if you maybe go out to Green Bay on Monday night and steal that game from them. If you lose this game, it doesn't really matter because this is a game you have to win. That's a game that you're okay, they're going to be heavy favorites. You're going to be going up there playing in 30 degrees. You lose that game, I was going to be that was a really tough game, right? So, I just don't think, I think if you can't go out and win this game, then I don't know what the conversation is going to be completely different when you go out to Green Bay. I think it's also a scenario that you look at it and you say, okay, if you win this game, then you go out to New York for a game you definitely should win. And you have the first 4-game winning streak since the 2020 season, since Drew Brees was here, right? That's the type of feather in your cap that gets you a head coaching job. Going out and win, loss, win. That's the Dennis Allen era in a nutshell. Right, Dennis Allen had plenty of 2-game winning streaks. He had a couple 3-game winning streaks, but he never had a run of sustained success that included 4 wins in a row, or even wins coming back from a bye week. Right, it was always this short-lived. Okay, we're in decent shape, but not great shape. So a 4-game winning streak as an interim head coach, that's massive. But you have to beat the Rams to get there, right? And that's why, like, I look at this game and say, like, hey, this is where you kind of figure out whether the things are going better under Darren, or if this is just kind of the natural progression of moving on from DA and kind of cutting that tension. So everyone's like, okay, I feel better now. So I don't know.
Can Darren be the dude? Right. I think that's big too, just because, you're coming off this break now, that bump, like you mentioned, that interim head coaching bump. Okay, we'll say it lasted 2 games. Now, can they come out with that same Rizz, that same coach, Coach Rizz energy for this matchup? The things being all different in the locker room, or, the schedule being changed up. Does that still factor into what we're seeing on the field? Because at this point now, I agree with you. It's like, all right, you got this to close out the season, and being at home against the Rams team, it's always been a problem. Although the Saints have done pretty well at home against the Rams, but it's one of those kind of statements that Rizz can make, saying, yes, they're following they're hearing what I have to say. They're bought into it, and that energy can carry and withstand. And then I think that's a big thing too, being able to see, all right, this team looks different, which with Coach Rizzi running the show, not like you're saying too. It's like, all right, we're back off the bye playing the Rams, and then you fall into some bad habits again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that Mickey would necessarily want to go with the interim head coach, because I think any GM would be like, I kind of want to hire my own head coach. Yeah. Right. Like, I don't want to be kind of backed into a corner of like, I have to hire this guy because the sentiment is there. Right. Like, you want it to be a business decision and not an emotional decision.
I think it is a little interesting. At least he's interviewed for the head coaching gig before, so they kind of knew his head coaching intentions ahead of time.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying like Mickey is like looking for reasons to like knock down Rizz. I'm just saying, like, what from the conversation, you want it to be like, okay, we're hiring because he's the best option, not because everyone's excited about Rizz right now. That said, the reason I think this Rams game is so important is because when you kind of go into that conversation, you could probably talk yourself into, okay, you went out and lost to the Packers. Like, you could say that's the most important, that's the most difficult game. But you could say, hey, you went 5-1 and you lost to the Packers. That's still a fantastic finish, right? Like, you could still I could still accept that argument of like, hey, we're going to keep Rizz around even though we lost to the Packers, because that's a really tough thing to do, to go out to Green Bay on December 23rd and win a game against a team that's 9-3. Who knows what they'll be at that point? If you lose to the Rams and the Packers, and those are the 2 games, it's like, man, you really got to win one of these games. Yeah. I think you probably don't. Like, you probably do say, yeah, I mean, this was good, this was fun, but we're probably going to go a different direction. So I think this game is huge. And if you win it, then, man, I think the conversation starts to get real. One more clip I want to hit before we move on, because I thought it was unintentionally hilarious from Darren. This is him getting asked if he feels like the morale has been up in the locker room over the last several weeks.
The morale's been boosted. I don't really know quite how to put my finger on the exact reason. I think it's multiple things. Winning certainly cures a whole lot of that. When you're playing well, morale's usually higher. I think that's been in just this few short weeks that I've taken over. That's been the thing that's been probably the most pleasant thing to me, is coming to work every day and seeing the guys in the locker room and seeing the emotion at practice and seeing the guys on the sideline and so yeah. I mean, I think we've certainly had a morale boost. I think Derek Carr has played some of his best football these last couple of weeks. It's a credit to him and the credit to the offensive staff and all the players around him. I think our enthusiasm, energy, I think all that's been better. So that always lifts morale. And then, like I said, when you win games, it certainly helps.
Yeah, I just can't put my finger on why. People just seem to be happier these days. I don't know. It's so weird. It's crazy, right? I can't think of why that might be.
Must be the locker shift. Everybody's happy with their groups now.
Yeah, that's the diplomat's answer right there. Yeah, have Darren be like in charge of like international relations with some foreign body, because man, good for him. It's just like and like I don't know if he's even like saying that tongue in cheek. I think he genuinely is. He's not like trying to talk shit about DA, but it was just funny because because it's like he can't deny that people are in a better mood these days, but he's not willing to be like, oh, well, that's obviously because that guy's gone and I'm not him. But it's so funny. He's like, I can't figure it out. I know it's so weird, right? It's crazy.
Well, good, valid point, though. Obviously, we've talked about it, too. All these changes and his personality, it doesn't mean a lick of nothing if you're not winning.
No, and I think he is correct there that, like, yeah, when you win 2 games in a row, everyone's going to be in a better mood. Like, we haven't had to see Rizz deal with well, we just had a bad loss locker room, like that's different. And I think you will at some point, and I'm curious to see how it goes, right? Like, how does his personality take on a game like the Panthers loss, right? Like he didn't have to deal with the fallout of that game. He got to be, the good cop coming in, like, and like being like, all right, guys, he got to be the fun uncle showing up and like taking everyone to buy toys. Like he didn't have to like put the kids in timeout or anything. So we'll see. But either way, again, I'm a fan of Rizz. I think he's going to get a head coaching job at some point. I'd like to think he gets a head coaching job at some point. And so that's why I view this week as probably the biggest week of all of these, of all 8 games that he gets to coach. He might have a little advantage too with the Mickey Loomis and whatever regime thinking. You see a guy like Dan Campbell now, obviously having all that success in Detroit, and you go, what maybe could have, would have been if he had just stayed here. Obviously, that wasn't the case. When he left, Sean Payton was still the head coach. Nothing was going to be different. Yeah, and now it's more about, okay, when you have Rizz, it's more about, I believe that he can get the locker room where it needs to be. Are your coordinators rock stars? Yeah. And the Lions, they can say that about both sides of the ball, and that's as big a reason as any that they are. I mean, you look at some of these plays Ben Johnson's drawing up.
Unreal, right?
Like I love you look at the line of that game, that Lions game, and this will be the last thing. You look at the running backs, right? You talk about David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I never normally would be like, I can't believe you drafted a running back and number 12 overall in Jahmyr Gibbs, and then not really play him like a bell cow back. I mean, that's why they're dominating these games. It's not because Jared Goff is going nuts. It's because they are beating you up at the line of scrimmage. And they're saying, here's David Montgomery. All right, you think he was fun to tackle? Here's Jahmyr. Right. Fresh. And I think David had 88 rushing yards and Jahmyr had 87. Which is just like you're just stunting on people at this point. You're just seeing
a hell of a 1-2 punch that any tandem would be jealous of. Yeah,
and David Montgomery, I learned is vegan, and I know that because
that's right.
The everyone's taking the turkey legs. He took a carrot.
Yeah, it's like, who takes a carrot?
I got a carrot. And you're like so happy about it. Anyway, but all right, good stuff. Let's wrap up this segment. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We are getting you ready for Saints 4-7 hosting the Rams 5-6, 3:05 p.m. on Sunday at the Superdome. We're going to be bringing in Greg Beacham, Rams writer for the Associated Press, and also covers basically everything else out in L.A. Give us the lowdown of what's going on with the Rams, why they're kind of disappointing this season, but also not at the same time. Like it's a weird scenario. So we're going to dive into all of that. Again, this is Inside Black and Gold. If you haven't subscribed yet, do that. Leave us a rating, leave us a review, whatever. You can hit me up at Jeff_Nowak. You can hit Steve up at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Otherwise, stick around. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold, getting you ready for Rams 5-6 at Saints 4-7. A couple teams that probably thought they would have a much better record right about now, but still alive because the NFC is still wide open. So we're going to get into it. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. We're bringing in Greg Beacham. And Greg, one thing I always appreciate about AP writers, because it's Greg obviously covers the Rams for AP, but even your Twitter bio is hilarious to me because it says reporter for the Associated Press covering the Rams, Lakers, Angels, USC football, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Anaheim Ducks, LA Kings hockey, boxing, and MMA. That's quite a list. So you keep yourself busy.
I'm a mile wide and an inch deep. That's how I like to characterize it.
Oh man. I got you. But all right, so let's just kind of get into it. The Rams this season, it kind of feels like a tale of two seasons, right? I think it was a 1-4 start 4-6 Is it as simple as, hey, guys were hurt and this team struggled, now they're healthy and they're playing a lot better? Or is it deeper than that?
It's as simple as they're a team on the rebuild. They don't have the things they need at some positions, and they're really good at other positions. And the inconsistencies kind of played into those 2 quarters of the season. It was unusual the way it played out, but I think the team that we've seen the last few weeks is the team that they are. They're a good offensive team with a good passing game that struggles to run the ball a lot. They're a good defensive team that's on the come up, but it's not there yet. They still lack players at a lot of positions, particularly the back 7. And I think Saquon Barkley showed that they are still struggling to figure out their run defense on any fundamental level. So they're a team in progress. I think their record reflects about what they are at this point. And in the NFC West, that's enough to stay in the playoff race. It might be enough to make the playoffs. Who knows? But I don't think they're better or worse than their record indicates. I think this is what they are right now this year.
Looking at the running back in Kyren Williams, obviously a key part to their offense, but I know he has struggled this year with holding onto the football.
Yeah, particularly lately. He lost the ball a couple times in against the Eagles last weekend. He's fumbled more times this year than he did all of last year. It wasn't a problem in some games, and it wasn't a problem last year. You know, with fumbles, they come in waves sometimes, and you have to ride that out if you believe in the back, if you believe in his fundamental athletic abilities, and the Rams certainly do in Kyren. I mean, he was one of the best running backs in the league last year, and he remains dangerous here. He looks deadly. His yard per carry is down significantly from last year. Part of that's a reflection of him. Part of that's a reflection of the offensive line that hasn't been quite as good as they thought it was going to be after the investment they made in it. So they kind of are what they are in terms of a running game. They've struggled to get it going, and I don't know that this is the week they'll get it going, but they're going to keep trying. I know that, and I know they believe in him. They also believe in Blake Corum, the rookie backup they've got. So I don't think they're unhappy with their personnel at running back. I think it's more scheme. I think it's more execution, and I think it's more the offensive line.
Yeah, and you know, the offensive line I think is interesting because you look at this. One of the splits that's interesting to me is something we're going to talk more about the rest of this episode is, you know, you look at the Rams lost 6 games. In those 6 losses, Matt Stafford has been sacked 22 times. In the 5 wins, he's been sacked 4 times. That's a pretty stark difference. And I don't think that kind of boils down to, hey, we didn't have the receivers. I mean, that's not getting you sacked. Maybe it is. Maybe they're not getting open as fast, but does that tell the story? Do those stats kind of show when you're watching these games that when the Rams are struggling, Matt Stafford is having on his feet?
As much as any team in the NFL, probably more than most teams, the Rams go how Stafford goes. And how Stafford goes depends on how much he stays upright and how little pressure he has on him. A lot of that is a reflection of the games that you're winning, too. You can call the plays you want to call. You can put Matthew Stafford in positions to succeed. Whereas if you fall behind, as they did frequently in the first 5 games of the year when they started 1-4, he ended up having to drop back, take a lot of multiple step dropbacks, and that's when you get hit. Or you're playing the Eagles and they have, you know, that dangerous pass rush, that incredible defense overall, and you're putting him out there trying to let him have time to make some things happen, and he's going to get hit, especially against really good teams with good pass rushers. You know, having said that, the pass game is what has driven this offense. It's the engine. It's the best thing they've got going still. Stafford to Nakua, Stafford to Cooper Kupp is a deadly, really hard to stop combination. You can look at their numbers against the Eagles and see that they put up good numbers, even though they lost pretty handily. But what you don't see is that the Eagles were all over Nakua and Kupp. I mean, it was really good defense, not much separation at all day. Cooper Kupp had 60 yards receiving, 27 of them were on a touchdown pass at the end of the game after it was already decided. And the fact that they were able to still generate those numbers with an excellent defensive performance from the Eagles tells you pretty much what you need to know about particularly the bond between Stafford and Nakua. It's really impressive right now what they're doing, and on a team that's a 500 team, and the fact that they're able to just hook up repeatedly over and over again for this kind of stuff. That's the heart of the Rams, and that's what you've got to stop if you're playing the Rams.
Yeah, you mentioned the heart of the Rams right there, and that scares the bejesus out of all Saints and Saints fans just because Paulson Adebo, one of their cornerbacks, gone for the year with an injury. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore has been traded away. But what has been the key with a guy like Puka Nacua? How has he progressed so far in the NFL? Because it seems like he's already making his way into that elite category of NFL receivers.
He is. He's played 23 NFL games. He's had 100 yards receiving in 11 of them, and 98 in one of the other ones. So if you're averaging a hundo, you're doing all right as an NFL receiver. So, you know, he's improved this year. He's changed his game. Being injured makes him fresher now than he would have been at this point last year when he was taking a ton of hits. He's a very physical receiver who likes contact after the catch, who enjoys fighting through things, that will bite you at the end of your career. Obviously, if you take enough of those hits, he's already trying to learn how to take fewer hits, how to absorb punishment better. That's an underrated skill for an NFL receiver. He's trying to learn it. And it goes against his natural instinct just to brawl and play backyard football. He's such a fun player to watch. He enjoys the game so much. He just loves football. So it's fun to watch him learn how to become a professional on top of being just this incredible athlete and just incredible young talent. So that's been a lot of fun to watch in general. It's just his maturation as a receiver and having a quarterback like Matthew Stafford who will put the ball on a platter for you 10 to 12 times a game. It's great. It's been one of the more fun things to watch on a team that hasn't always been fun to watch this year.
Yeah, we had his brother Samson in New Orleans for a little bit. Unfortunately, he's not as talented as Puka.
Puka's a one-on-one. He's pretty incredible. He's remarkable, yeah.
Samson would tell you he just gets the short end of the stick on the athleticism conversation. He's like, I'm the fastest one in the family. So for some reason, everyone thinks I'm slow. But no, Puka's funny because I remember I talked to Ike Yadam after the Saints-Rams game last year, and because Puka went wild in that game, and I was like, why is he so difficult to stop? And he's like, because it's like trying to tackle a running back. Like he's that physical at the wide receiver position. And you watch him, you look at him out there like, oh yeah, I believe it. Like he's built for a wide receiver. Yep. And Cooper Kupp too. I mean, he's a big dude. It does remind me, the Rams right now, just with the depth issues that have kind of stemmed from going all in for the Super Bowl, right? Which I don't think anyone would complain about, but that does, when you trade away all those first round picks and you kind of go all in, that does rob you of some depth on the back end. And it reminds me a little bit of the Saints teams in like 2014, 15, 16, where Drew Brees was balling and you kind of felt like, oh, the offense has the talent, but the other side of the ball maybe not be there. And, you look at a Rams front seven that is starting two rookies who were at Florida State last year. I mean, that's pretty telling of some of the depth there. Obviously, replacing Aaron Donald is never going to be easy, but Braden Fisk, Jared Verse are playing very well. So what has kind of been your kind of read on that group? It does seem like the weak point at times, but then you're like, hey, we're looking at rookies who are developing. So where do you land on all that?
There's a lot of promise up front. Jared Verse is putting up some nice numbers. Braden Fisk is putting up some nice numbers. They did not play well against the Eagles. I mean, the entire defense didn't play that well against the Eagles. They did their best. But to me, it comes back to, you've made a decision to change over your line. Aaron Donald retires on you in March. There's nothing you can do about that. You're going to have to rebuild. He's not only the best player on your defense, he's the heart of your defense. He's what everything else builds off of. So they've had to rebuild this with a first-year coordinator who's never been a coordinator before. So all those things contributed to the fact that it looked like they would have a down year on defense, and it's not been great so far. They put together a few good games in the last few weeks, but that kind of all went out the window last week when you give up 481 to the Eagles. I don't hate their defensive line. I think they've got a lot of potential, a lot of talent. They're going to be better in a year or two than they are now. The place where they really lack to me is in the back seven. Their inside linebackers are not special at all. They're just guys. This team does not value inside linebacking as a position. They've proven that repeatedly over the years, letting guys go for nothing. They traded Ernest Jones for a bag of chips right before the season. He was their leading tackler by far last year, and they just decided, we can replace you with a practice squad guy. We don't care. That it just doesn't seem logical to me as a football guy. I know inside linebacker is not a valued position in the league and that kind of stuff. But when you have a guy on a rookie contract who you could just let play it out and make 145 tackles for you, I don't know why you don't just do that. The two guys they replaced him with are fine, but they're an undrafted rookie free agent and a guy who played his way up off the practice squad. And you saw that against Saquon. I mean, when they get up against elite running back like Alvin Kamara, they struggle to make the tackles over and over again. And that's been their Achilles heel all year. Sean McVay essentially admitted it a couple of weeks ago. He's like, yeah, I don't know if that trade worked out the way we thought it should. I'm paraphrasing, but even he has realized that maybe there's a little bit of value to having a good run stopping inside linebacker who can occasionally cover in pass coverage, which they do not have right now. And that's, if I'm an offensive coordinator going against the Rams, I figure out how to exploit that every week, just because if you can get those guys in coverage, if you can force them to fill the right gap 30 times a game and they get it wrong once and Saquon's gone for 72 yards, that kind of thing. So I don't worry about their defensive front as much as I worry about what's behind them. The secondary is not special either, but the linebackers are really an obvious weak point that I think good offenses have exploited repeatedly this year.
Curious, is there still much talk about the 2018 NFC Championship game? Obviously, Saints fans still very bitter over everything that happened there. I'm just wondering how the Rams nation, do they even think about it?
Oh, was there a controversy? I don't even know. I'm not sure. Oh, absolutely. It comes up. I mean, it's one of the great wins of the Rams in the Sean McVay era. You know, I mean, games come down to calls, and probably was the wrong call. Sean McVay has admitted it was probably the wrong call, but, you know, you just life goes on. You know, we move on, we see new things. And yeah, I think it's still one of the great moments. And I think the Superdome will always have a fond place in the heart of Rams fans. We'll see if we can make it a little less fond on the weekend, but we'll see.
Yeah. And like the no call, that's on the refs. I don't put that on the Rams. I hear a lot of people be like, this is the Rams. Like the Rams won the game. They just played the game that was in front of them. Right. Greg Zuerlein will never miss a kick in the Superdome as long as he lives. He could have kicked that from 90 yards. It probably would have gone in.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, I guess like just kind of to push forward to this game. Like, what's the mood going into this game? Because this kind of feels like one of these teams is going to come out of this and feel like, okay, we're headed in the right direction. We're still alive in the NFC. We beat one of these teams that's in the running, and now we have the tiebreaker over them if it comes down to it. We saw how that played out for the Saints last year. Two teams that went 9-8 made the playoffs. The Saints went 9-8 and they missed the playoffs. So it does come down to games like this, particularly with the tiebreakers in the NFC. So what is kind of the Rams' mood going into this game? Because for the Saints, you're talking about a team that changed head coaches. They've won 2 games. They're fresh coming off a bye. There's confidence there. The Rams, it kind of feels like it could go either way. Where do you see the confidence level with this team right now?
I don't know. There's a lot of confidence right now, but I do know they really need to win this game. They're in a 4-game stretch of the schedule that has the Philadelphia Eagles, the rebuilding New Orleans Saints, Buffalo, and then San Francisco on a short week, a team that owns them, except for earlier this year when they won the JV game when everybody was out. So they really need this win. They if they don't win this one, they're probably going to go 5-9 into the last 4 games of the year, which is not where last 3, which is not where you want to be at the end of the year. If you're 6-8, that's a lot more manageable number in terms of what you can do and have yourself in the legitimate playoff conversation, because their last 4 games of the year aren't too bad. But if they lose this one, if they drop this one, if Alvin goes crazy on them or something, they're looking at next year, I would think, just because I don't know how they beat Buffalo the way Buffalo's playing. I don't know how they win at Santa Clara on a short week. So they would never say that. Obviously, that's not a thing. That's not the way that coaches and players can afford to think. That's the way that we can afford to think. And I look at this and I'm like, this is a must-win for the Los Angeles Rams if they want to have a shot of sneaking into the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. And we'll see if they can get it done.
Obviously, we talk about Stafford, all the weapons you have there, also, and Kyron Williams, the running back. But who do you think he could be defensively, too? Offense, defense, someone maybe that we don't talk about, not one of the big names that could end up being a key factor in this matchup on Sunday.
I would have said Demarcus Robinson, their receiver. Then he got popped for DUI after the game, and we don't know if he's playing or not. So
right.
He's having a really good year. He's been a real good number 3 option for the offense. Dependable quality receiver. 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. He's done a good job. And then he made a really bad decision on a Sunday night about 5 a.m. And we'll see what that means for his future. I don't know. But in terms of overall guys who could make an impact, I think the Rams defense is going to have to step up and show something in this game. So I would look at both the pass rush, Jared Verse and Byron Young on the edge. This would be a good opportunity to have another signature game. Go after a quarterback that's gettable if they can get it going and get that going. But also the defensive backs need a recovery game after what's happened to them the last couple of weeks. Darius Williams is having a quietly decent season for the Rams. They've struggled at other places with injuries and stuff. So, Darius Williams getting in a good matchup. Cam Curl, the safety, having a quietly good year. Another one of the signings that has gone well for them in general. I mean, you can look at numbers and say this and that, but all that to me is a reflection of the overall defense. I think Cam Curl's done a good job being where he needs to be and playing the position he needs to play. So if they can have a strong game on pass defense, try to shut down, what New Orleans is trying to do and force them to put everything on the run where they can sell out to some extent on the run, that would be a successful day for me for the Rams. And I think that would make the difference if they can have a bounce back defensive game after everything the Eagles did to them a couple nights ago.
You just named a bunch of names there, and we've been talking. The Rams have some of the coolest names in the NFL. Like, I don't know. You got Puka Nacua, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Ronnie Rivers, which sounds like a used car lot somewhere. Right? You're talking about Cam Curl, which is just a fun name to say. Just a lot. It's an all-name team. Like it's a good team. But And one of the names we didn't mention, and it's funny because I was like, Tutu Atwell. I feel like I remember that name. I feel like he had a big game against the Saints in 22. And then I went and looked. It was like, actually, he didn't. He had one catch on one target. It just happened to go for 62 yards and a touchdown.
There you go.
I was like, why aren't we talking about Tutu Atwell? And anyway, he does seem like he had a solid year. So if DeMarcus can't go, would he be a guy to watch?
Absolutely, yeah. Tutu Atwell's been there 4 years. Sean McVay has not figured out how to use him, and it really stinks because he looks like an NFL caliber receiver. He's shorter than the average receiver. He's extremely fast. He's got good hands. I've felt for the last 2 years that it became clear that like once Sean McVay doesn't figure you out, he doesn't figure you out, and he's consigned Tutu to a depth receiver role who doesn't really get to play a lot when the other guys are all healthy. I really think he's going to sign with somebody next year and have a really good year on a team where like he has to play every down and he has to be a regular target for a receiver. He's an unsung treasure in terms of a talent that can play in this league. I firmly believe that. He's so fast and he's a good ball catcher. For some reason, he doesn't mesh with Sean McVay, but look out for him in 2025 on some good team.
But all right, Greg Beacham covers the Rams and about everybody else out in LA for the Associated Press. Thanks so much for the time. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Steve. Happy holidays.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to Greg Beacham, writer for the Associated Press, for coming on. I thought he did a great job. Yeah, I should go check him out at Greg Beacham, BEACHAM on Twitter. And like, I do find it hilarious when you talk to these guys because it's like, wait, where are you on Tuesday? Oh, you're covering a hockey game. How about Friday? Oh, you're covering an NBA game. All right, Sunday. Yeah, okay. We got the Rams. We got the Saints. Saturday, USC, maybe Cal. I don't even know.
Stanford? No, you went down his Twitter bio too. He's got the full slate, all sports, all leagues, you name it.
Yeah, doesn't matter what shape the ball is, what color it is. He's probably covering it. Might even be a puck. Who knows?
Or MMA. You mentioned not even a ball or puck.
Yeah. If there's badminton going on, he's probably there too. But no, I think he hit the nail on the head. Like, this game is a must-win game for both teams. And it's weird because, yeah, the Saints are one game worse than the Rams right now. But whichever team, if the Saints win this game, they will be ahead of the Rams in terms of controlling your teams will be 5-7, but the Saints will have that tiebreaker. So while the Saints are obviously on the outside track, a win over the Rams puts them right there. And you would have won 3 in a row. You're right there. And the Rams, if they lose this game, where are they? They're 5-7. Right. You know, the same record as the Saints, but in doing that, they will have lost 2 games in a row against, one of them against a team that they should feel like they are better than and beat up on last year. So I think there's a lot at stake for both teams in this game. And it's kind of a statement of like, do you want to be a team that's in contention the rest of the way? Or do you want to be a team that spends the last 3 or 4 weeks thinking about a draft pick?
No, you mentioned it with the Rams. They're fighting for their lives too. The NFC West is definitely a lot more jumbled than I thought it was going to be this year. You look at it and, make or break time is coming down to, December football coming up here. And there's still far from anything decided in that division on who's going to be on top.
Well, I mean, the NFC West and the NFC South are the same thing right now.
Yeah, basically, right.
You got a couple bird teams hanging out at the top, right? You're talking about 6-5 bird teams. They got 2 6-5 bird teams. We got 1 6-5 bird team. One of theirs is red and black, right? The Cardinals are red and black, I think. I don't know. The other one's a blue bird. They hang up by the water, but they're still a bird. They're still 6-5. So if you're a bird in either of these divisions, you're going to be a little bit over 500, kind of treading water. What you going to do? And then, you go to the next one. It's like, oh, you got a Rams team, you got a Saints team, you got a Bucks team. I don't know. Like, do Bucks wear horns? I think like Buccaneers, would they have horns on their helmets? Like, I think the Rams have horns. So one of them has the Pope, right? We got the Pope sending out hashtags.
I'll definitely take the Pope. I like him on our side for sure.
They got, they get the heathen holidays. We get the religious holidays, the pagan holidays, right?
Oh, so those pagan Rams.
But no, I mean, you look at these divisions and they're way up in the air, right?
Yeah.
Now the Falcons have the inside track because they have the tiebreaker over the Bucks and the Saints, but they're falling off a cliff. They've lost 2 in a row. The Bucks seem to have gotten it back on track. So, like, you can talk about a wild card or you can talk about the division. Either way, both of these teams, despite terrible starts to the season, are still alive. And so, again, it's kind of like this is a decide who you want to be this season game. And it's a decide whether whether you want Darren Rizzi to keep bringing like construction tools to meetings or not kind of game.
Yeah, I can't imagine like what he's got left in the utility belt, I guess you could say.
He's got to be running out of stuff, right? There's a lot of construction going on at the facility. I think eventually he might just be like, can I borrow the backhoe for a couple minutes?
I'm going to use this soldering iron today.
I don't know if that's construction. That's more of engineering.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think he would bring in the belt sander before he went for like engineering tools.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe like a rake. I don't know. Like a pole digger.
You know what? They just wrapped up everything, the construction with the cafeteria. Right. So he's got stuff at his disposal.
That's what I'm talking about. You can just walk out there, grab like a post hole digger and start talking like, I don't even know what this is, but we're going to make a metaphor about it. And and it's like, I'm hopeful because, I've talked about this at length. I'm never going to be a draft pick guy. I'm always going to be a, what if something crazy happens guy? Because that's when things get real fun. So we'll see. I think this game is kind of that fulcrum point of like, hey, is something cool going to happen? Or are we just kind of like in that very boring, multiverse branch of like,
and you could argue with the draft pick stuff. It's not the pick of where it is. It's how you use it.
That's what she said joke in there somewhere.
Exactly.
But like a 4 and 8, I'm not talking about, maybe they went out. At 4 and 8, I'm like, okay, we're moving on. 5 and 7, I'm all in, baby. 5 and 7 with the Giants coming up, I'm all in, baby. You got anything?
No, I'm just thinking about that meme where the guy's pointing. It's like, I'm in, you son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch. That's just when I thought I was out. Anyway, all right. That's going to wrap it up. Again, thanks to Greg Beacham for coming on. We're going to come back, close out the episode with X Factors for Saints versus Rams. That's my voiceover voice. Do you think it's good? Do you think I got a future in it?
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll be back. Stick around.
Stay tuned, black and gold fans.
Yours is better than mine. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller getting you ready for Saints Rams. 3:05 p.m. at the Superdome. Good stuff. Afternoon start, which is post-Thanksgiving game. I feel like an afternoon start is friendly. So I'm happy about that. Thanks again to Greg Beacham for coming on. A lot of great information from him, I thought. And, he's going to be busy. I don't think he's going to be in New Orleans. I think he said that he's not going to be here, but he'll be here in spirit because we'll have Brett Martell in there, and they're like the same person. They have like the curly hair, and I kind of feel like all the AP writers are just like one entity that just is like,
they're like the clones from Star Wars. They just have different assignments.
Yeah. Exactly. But all right, yeah. Again, Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. This segment's going to be X factors, breaking down. Okay, what's going to be the important details that swing this matchup, both on offense, on defense, and this is going to be a few of them, right? Like I think this is a game, and you talk to Darren Rizzi this week, and he'll tell you like the defense kind of got raked over the coals for that Week 16 game last year.
Yeah,
in terms of like, they kind of got run on, and they didn't do a ton to win that game for you, but the offense also did not do them any favors. And you had the ball in plus territory like all game long, and you were just not putting up points. Like you drove inside the 40 on the opening drive, sack, punt. You had the ball near midfield on the final possession, your final possession of the first half, down 10-7 with a chance to either kick a field goal and tie it, score a touchdown, take the lead going into halftime. Instead, you get stopped on a 4th down and they score. So instead of, at worst 10-7, it's 17-7 going into the break. They get the ball after halftime, and that game completely just turns on a dime. So, it's interesting. Like, which side of the ball do you want to focus on as, this is what's going to cost them the game? But, I think since everyone's going to talk about defense, let's start with offense. And so, Steve, what's one of your X factors on offense that you think is going to be super important for this game?
We mentioned in the first segment at the end there about the Lions and that 1-2 punch of, Gibbs and Montgomery. Well, I need the 1-2 punch of the Saints, AK and Taysom Hill to be the dominant and big focal points in this game too, just to, you put up 35 points last game, and I felt satisfied for once with Taysom's usage. I'm pretty, I get ornery all the time. I feel like, why didn't he get more touches in a game? It's easy when it's working, obviously, but everything just went right in that matchup, and I wasn't left going, whoa, why didn't they give Taysom the ball more? So I'm hoping that that share of the workload is divvied up in the same manner, and also you continue to focus on that in the second half. I feel like for whatever reason, some reason after halftime in games, Taysom seems to disappear. That cannot be the case.
Fair question, because he has dealt with some of that. I think our usage with him these last couple of weeks is really what we're kind of trying to trend towards. A little bit of everything, not too much of anything. And listen, he's obviously a huge part of what we do. I said it after the game, and I'll say it again. The more he's on the field, the more effective we've been. And all the times I've been here, there's that fine line between getting him too much and not enough. And so we got to do a good job of managing that. And I thought Clint and the staff the last couple of weeks, I think his usage has been really, really good. And obviously he helps us on special teams as well. He has a 42-yard kick return. And so, I think sprinkling him a little bit everywhere is where we're at our best.
What's been kind of, I guess, the challenge with that? Like, you see him have these big impact games, but not always be really heavily involved in terms of touches.
Well, I think the challenge is usually with a guy that's not Taysom is the mental. He's such a high football IQ, maybe the highest football IQ I've been around, and so you usually are worried about a guy playing tight end and running back and quarterback and kick returner and personal protector. You usually worry about the mental load. That hasn't been an issue with him, and so because of that, he enables us to use him in so many different ways.
Yeah, and so I tweeted the quote from Darren Rizzi out, but like, hey, we're trending toward where we want to be with Taysom, and he said the last 2 weeks. I kind of feel like that's last week, right? Because 2 weeks ago, the game against the Falcons, I don't think you got the usage. That's why the Browns game was so informative of like, okay, this is what it looks like when you are giving him the usage that he should have. And there is a factor of like, hey, we need to keep him healthy. We need to be smart. Like, but and this obviously isn't a fantasy football conversation, but when I tweeted that clip out, all the fantasy football nerds went nuts because everyone's finally on the same page with me of like, you should have Taysom Hill on your fantasy roster. It's like, how many players in the NFL can have the potential to go off like Taysom Hill can? And like I start Dallas Goedert, and like Dallas Goedert's supposed to be a really good fantasy player. He'll go off for like 2 points a lot of weeks. Like he'll just disappear, and then you watch him play, and like, where is he? Like I don't know. Whereas like Taysom, you at least have a baseline for, and this is Adam Koffler's a fantasy guy. He looked up. Okay, so Taysom Hill had 17 opportunities in week 11.
Okay,
and I think opportunities is a good way to look at it because a lot of times we talk about touches, but opportunities also factor in passes. They factor in incompletions. They factor in targets that are not completed. So like, even if you don't get a touch because it was an incomplete pass, you still threw to him in the passing game. So that should count, right? Like,
totally.
Catch it doesn't mean that it's not going to go down as a play that he could have impacted. So I think opportunities actually is a better way to look at it. And so he looked up, okay, his fantasy points in games where he's seen 10 or more opportunities over the last 2 seasons. So this is standard: 16, 41.5, 8.7, 16.8, 22.5, 22.6, 15.4, 11.9. It's a median of 16.4 fantasy points per game. So it's like, a lot of guys, hey, oh yeah, you give a running back 17 touches, he might go for 35 yards, right? When you're giving Taysom Hill the ball, in however you do it, he's producing. He's always producing. The only thing that prevents him from producing is not getting in the ball. So I agree with you completely. I love the way they used him last week. Now, do you need to pepper him that much? Maybe not. But I do want him on the field. I want the defense having to prepare for you doing that. Because just forcing them to take their time in a week, especially like a Thanksgiving week where they don't have a ton of time, they want to everyone wants to go eat Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like no one wants to spend those extra 4 hours coming up with a special package to do with Taysom Hill and wherever he's going to line up. So like I need other teams to have to do that. And that's why like when he's out and you missed all those games, like you miss him on the field, but you also miss the threat of him at every point. And so what I think the Saints did last week is force the Browns to be accountable for him on almost every play. And then this week, the Rams are now looking at that and being like, crap, we gotta plan for him. So no, I agree. I think a lot of times it's easy to kind of like game flow, get you out of the Taysom script. But in an offense like this, where you don't have the playmakers, you don't have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, you don't have Kendre Miller, like Jamal Williams might play, might not. Like, there's no reason to not have him be a heavy part of that rotation. So
keep peppering him. I like heavy sprinkles. He mentioned sprinkles of Taysom. Give me heavy sprinkles.
Yeah, big sprinkles, like the giant ones, and just toss them in there. Yeah, sprinkle is not the word. I want it to be like a fire hose. Anyway, all right. Anything else on offense you want to hit?
No, you had mentioned it's like the last two games that Falcons game, we had figured Taysom being the dirty bird killer wasn't utilized enough. So yeah, Rizz was obviously enamored with those big chunk runs that Taysom pulled off in the last matchup, and hopefully wants to see even more of that. Between him and MVS, that's been some exciting football for the black and gold.
Oh, no question. One other thing I do want to highlight, and kind of talked about this a little bit with Greg Beacham in terms of, okay, Matt Stafford, he gets sacked a lot in games they lose. He doesn't get sacked in games they win. Yeah. And so I looked that up from the Saints perspective, and we can talk more about the defense when we get there. But, when you look at the Saints from an offensive perspective, there actually is no correlation in terms of, okay, Derek Carr got sacked a lot in this game. He lost. Derek Carr didn't get sacked in this game. Derek Carr has started 8 games for the Saints this year, right? Obviously, Spencer Rattler started 3. He has been sacked 7 times in those 8 games. 7 times. That doesn't happen by accident, especially when and like a lot of times you might look at me, oh, well, he just has a great offensive line. No. You're talking about a rookie left tackle, Trevor Penning at right tackle, and then your interior offensive line has been a rotation of like, oh, this guy's healthy, who's that guy? Oh, that guy's from the Jets, let's bring him in. Like this has not been a star rotation at the offensive line. And you can there's a graph I tweeted or I retweeted recently from Ben Baldwin, which is just pass block grade versus sack rate. And the Saints in these grades have the worst graded offensive line in terms of pass protection. And they have also allowed the lowest sacks in the NFL, specifically when Derek Carr was at quarterback. And I asked Derek this week if that was the focus on him going into the season. And, I thought his answer, while couched in a lot of fluff that is like, okay, I gotta be, I need my offensive line to know that I'm there for them. It's really not about the offensive line.
I think you've only taken 7 sacks in 8 games. I think that's the number. Was that a focus going into this year, limiting that number specifically?
Yeah, I think first you got to give credit to our offensive line. They've played really well. Especially in some of the past games against some of the people that we've played. So our offensive line has done an outstanding job. And I can't remember when I talked about this, but whenever they play well, it allows me the freedom to play the quarterback position how you want to, manipulate guys and take a half second here. You can move this guy to make that throw, instead of just having to find a quick one to keep the, chains moving and things like that. So I think a lot of that credit just goes to our offensive line and how well that they've played, even though there's been guys in and out. Those guys as a unit, just their togetherness and their unity, has really helped push us as an offensive football team. And so, me personally, just trying my best to throw them away when I can. I know I got an intentional grounding. I think that was last game and or 2 ago, one of our last home games. And but that's me just trying to find somebody to throw it away. So to eliminate that negative play. Now it ended up hurting us, but I'm just a lot goes into that. It's not just all in the O-line. It's me making good decisions, getting the ball. If someone does come free, hey, get it out. Second. Let's not make that bad play worse, right? And so there's been times where I've just dumped it at AK's feet or on a bootleg. It's not there, you throw it away. It's like, yeah, it's not what you want, but you live to play the next down. And so we've tried to limit that just as a team. But I think number one, our offensive line has done an outstanding job.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about coming into this year, and we talked about this podcast specifically, is I wanted to see Derek Carr play a lot more like late career Tom Brady. And by that, I meant you don't take sacks. Like Tom Brady didn't get sacked a lot. It wasn't because he was moving around, and it wasn't because he had a great offensive line, especially his last season. Like it was because he was not allowing himself to get sacked. He was not putting the team in bad situations by taking bad sacks, by doing what Caleb Williams does on basically every play and plays like it's 4th and 26 on every down. And it's like sometimes it's 1st and 10. Just get the ball out safely. Like, don't take a negative result when you don't have to. And, you know, like, I don't want it to sound like I'm trashing the Saints offensive line, because I think with the situation they found themselves in, they have played pretty well. And they've run blocked really well over the course of this season. But they have not pass protected particularly well. And when you talk about sacks, a lot of times I think we talk about that as if it is an offensive line stat. And it's a lot more than you'd think a quarterback stat as well. Bobby talks about this all the time. Like, you can make your offensive line look a lot better than it is by playing the quarterback position a specific way. And I just think, like, Derek, like one of the things you have to give him a lot of credit for, and one of his best traits as a veteran quarterback, is keeps you out of negative situations. That doesn't always work. Sometimes you try to throw the ball away, it doesn't go all the way out of bounds, and they get that crazy interception like he had against the Chiefs. But that's a product of, hey, I'm trying not to take a negative result here, and you ended up with the ultimate negative result of turnover. But, like, if you want to talk about it and say, hey, well, what does this look like when Derek's not in there? Spencer Rattler in 3 games, in 3 starts, which was not even the entirety of those games. He only played, like, he didn't play the final quarter against the Chargers, and he didn't play the final drive against the Broncos. So, like, that wasn't even 3 full games. He was sacked 14 times. 14 times. So if you want to look at it and say, oh, it's not about the quarterback, it's about the offensive line, what's different in those 2 scenarios? Right? And what prevented you from really having a chance? It was the fact that Spencer was on his back the entire time. So I don't know. Like, I think when you look at, okay, how does Derek Carr impact winning? That's a big part of it.
To Carr's credit, too, this season, he's definitely been getting the ball out quicker. There were times last year, I know you, me, whoever, were looking at the game and going, throw the damn ball. And that hasn't been the case this year. So kudos to him for working on that. And I guess by necessity with with what is lacking with the offensive line.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I wanted to ask him, because it's like, okay, was this something that you went into the season planning to do? Or was it kind of, okay, this is just kind of what happened? And I think he kind of said there without saying, it's like, yeah, I came to the season like trying to avoid, taking hits and turning the ball over. And again, 7 sacks in 8 starts is a nuts number. Like, especially when you're talking about, like, this is a Saints offensive line that we went into the year being like, this could torpedo the season.
Right.
So anyway, that's I don't even know if it's technically an X factor, but it's just something that I think people should be aware of. Like, that number is pretty crazy when you really think about it. And you saw the inverse of, like, what happens when you take a veteran quarterback out and you put a rookie in. And, you know, obviously those matchups are tough too. Like, the Broncos and Chargers are 2 of the best defenses in the NFL. So, you know, you got to give Spencer credit. Like, I'm not trying to trash Spencer either. I just think that's when you talk about what is the benefit of having a veteran quarterback that you can trust versus a young quarterback who's kind of learning on the job. Even like you look at a Caleb Williams, he's talking about number 1 overall pick. That dude's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL, and it's not because of his offensive line. His offensive line's not great, but you don't get sacked like 60 times in a season, which is what he's on pace for, because your offensive line is bad. You get sacked that many times because you don't understand how to avoid them. And a lot of times avoiding them is not outrunning them. It is understanding when a play is dead. And that's how you end up. And when you don't understand that, that's how you end up throwing an incompletion rather than kicking a game-tying field goal on Thanksgiving in front of a national audience, and embarrassing your entire organization in the process. So,
go Bears.
Go Bears. Apparently he changed the play. What head coach does not want their rookie quarterback changing the play on a running clock with 26 seconds left? I mean, like, I'm sure he's like, good job, Caleb. Way to read the room.
What he didn't do, at least, is throw his quarterback under the bus.
Oh, I guarantee you he wanted to.
Sure, but yeah, not in public for sure. Right.
And it's like, and it's a week after a 2nd and 10 in overtime against the Vikings, where he scrambles around for like 10 seconds and then takes a 16-yard sack. You ended up in 3rd and 26 twice in back-to-back games in like end-of-game scenarios because the quarterback refused to have common sense. Anyway, I'm not. I don't watch the Bears that much, and I'm glad, because it would drive me up the freaking wall. But all right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Tetsy's pretty quick before we go. And I'll start with the first one in terms of like, okay, we talked about sacks, right? I mentioned this stat against to Greg in terms of in the 5 games the Rams have lost. I'm sorry, the 6 games the Rams have lost. Matt Stafford has been sacked 22 times. In the 5 games they've won, he's been sacked 4 times. And you could say, okay, well, when you're behind and you're losing and you're trying to throw the ball to come back in the game, you're going to get sacked more often. That's natural. But 22-4, when you're basically a 500 football team, that's crazy. That is a stark difference. So the Saints need to get after the quarterback. I think that's pretty obvious when you look at those numbers. Like if the Saints can get Matt Stafford on the ground, they will drastically improve their chances of winning. And now you look at, okay, what does the Saints defense look like in that situation? And theirs is very similar. In the Saints' 4 wins this year, they have sacked the opposing quarterback 16 times. It's about 4 per game. In their 7 losses, 9. So that's pretty much on the same trajectory of like when you're losing games, it's because you're not getting pressure on quarterbacks. And when you're winning games, you are. Now, again, in games you're losing, when you're down by 30 to the Broncos, yeah, you're not going to get sacked because they're running the ball. But at the same time, you go look back at those games, you lost those games and you're like, well, did we get Bo Nix to the ground at all? Did we touch Bo Nix at any point in that game? No. How about Jalen Hurts? Did you really affect Jalen Hurts that much? No. Right? Bryce Young, did you get him to the ground that often? No. Right? At least in the second game. And the one they won, they got him to the ground like 5 different times. So that's a factor. Jameis, yeah, you got Jameis to the ground, I think 3 times. You sacked him 3 times. Kirk Cousins, you got him in both matchups, really, but you got him more in that second matchup. So, I think getting to the quarterback more so than maybe any other week is important this week because I don't think you can cover. Like I don't think that you're going to be able to take away Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp.
The good news too, Jeff, we don't have to worry about Stafford looking downfield and going, "Oh, I'm gonna take off and run now."
Well, that's true. Like that's also a part of it, right? But one of the reasons you have a hard time getting to a Bo Nix is he's mobile, and you don't want to rush completely upfield and allow him to get out. So, and Jalen Hurts is the same way. I felt like there was a lot of sugar rushing going on in that game where they weren't even necessarily. I think we give Chase Young a lot of grief for not getting sacks, but I think a lot of this season has been like I'm containing. Like when you're playing a quarterback that you're trying to not allow to run, you aren't just pinning your ears back and going to get him. You're containing, and maybe if you can get off a block and get to him, but you're not just like throwing caution to the wind and doing spin moves and doing everything possible to get to the guy. So it does eliminate that when you're talking about a Matt Stafford who isn't trying to run. You can be a little bit more aggressive on your match rush moves because even if he breaks contain, he's not going that far. Maybe he'll run 8 to 10 yards. He might get a key first down,
right? But
he's moving to throw. He's not moving to run. So that's why it becomes more important because you always, if you don't want him to pick you apart, you have to take him down. So yeah, I agree with you.
Another thing too, obviously, try and it's every game, but the turnover margin, obviously. But a guy like Kyren Williams, when you see he's leading the NFL in fumbles for running backs. He knows it right now. So hopefully it's in his head and maybe he can rip and strip some footballs and, pounce on that and take advantage.
Yeah. And Kyren, he didn't have a massive game last year. He was 22 carries for 104 yards, but he just constantly was just getting 3, 4, 5 yards. Like he was always falling forward. He was setting up easy 3rd down conversions. Like you did not have many short to negative results in the run game for the Rams. And that made it a lot more difficult to win, right? Like we're talking about, hey, get Matthew Stafford to the ground. When do you get sacks? When they're backed up. Like you don't see a lot of 1st down sacks. You see 3rd down sacks. You see 2nd and long sacks where they're trying to get yardage, right? So yeah, especially in like a scenario where one of the things that drives me up the wall is when you see like a penalty and the offense is like 1st and 20, 2nd and 20, and then you allow like a 15-yard run. And then I feel like that's what the Saints have done over the course of the season when they've been playing poorly is they get in these positive situations and they immediately allow like 15 yards instead of like making it a 2nd and 15 or a 3rd and 12.
You mentioned obviously extending those, plays, not giving them, the big yardage early on, letting them rack up those 1st downs. The Rams are second to last in efficiency on third down offense. So That's pretty key. Obviously, too, if you can put them in those situations, being able to get after Stafford and take him down. We've mentioned that those games where he's been kept clean, obviously he's been effective. But we saw last week, I think it was 4 or 5 sacks for the Eagles they had on the Rams. And they, man, between that and Saquon, they just rolled.
Yeah, and so, a couple more things on defense that I want to hit. One is like, okay, you mentioned Kyren Williams. You got to tackle him. You got to tackle well. Like, this is against this Rams team, they're going to be doing a lot at the line of scrimmage. They're not going to push the ball downfield that much. They would much rather execute you to death on the edges of the field. And have a guy like Puka Nacua really, get him the ball and have him break a tackle. Like, that's what he does. And I asked Joe Woods about this, and he said, yeah, I mean, like, he's just physical, and we have to match that physicality. And, you have young defensive backs who, Kool-Aid, I wouldn't say missed a lot of tackles, but he does get out of position a decent bit. And that's when you miss tackles, is when you're not you're reaching instead of squaring a guy up. Alontae Taylor has missed tackles, especially on the edges of the field against bigger guys. Now, when you're trying to ask him to tackle Dallas Goedert, that's tough. But Puka's no easier, so we're gonna have to see that. One thing that I did think was interesting is, I talked about this in a previous podcast of like, one of the reasons that why do you think this year's defense might handle the Rams a little easier than last year? Is, well, for one thing, you're going against that defense or that offense, or at least a variation of that offense all training camp. So that helps you in terms of like a team that's going to motion a lot, and you're a lot more used to it than maybe you were. But also, you played the Falcons twice, and the Falcons' offensive coordinator is Zach Robinson, who was Sean McVay's understudy quarterbacks coach last year. I think he was quarterbacks coach, might have been offensive pass game coordinator, whatever. And then Raheem Morris, their head coach, was Sean McVay's defensive coordinator. So like and Raheem Morris has always been kind of both sides of the ball guy. So there's a lot of influence from that Rams offense in that Falcons offense. And so I asked Joe Woods about that, and this is what he said.
There are, what the Falcons is running and what the Rams are running with Zach Robinson.
Very, very similar. You know what I mean? But I think they're in the first year of what they're doing. And, Sean McVay's been there for a long time. The players have been there for a long time. So they're well-oiled in terms of what they're doing.
Gotcha, just from the standpoint of going against a similar offense twice already this year, is that beneficial for, obviously even Alontae, who's...
Yeah, it's beneficial. I mean, they're similar, but they're not the same.
Right.
I mean, when you look in terms of the run game, what they're doing, some of the things I'm sure they're going to copy from what teams did to attack us early in the season. But there are similarities, but they're different. I would say a little bit more complex in terms of what they're doing scheme-wise because of the experience that they have.
First of all, great Saints answer, because he's basically saying like, yeah, they're similar, but the Falcons aren't as good.
Right.
Like they're similar, but the Falcons are just like, meh.
No, he mentioned with the Rams and McVay, obviously they're that well-oiled machine, which will scare you on offense for sure.
Oh no, and he's 100% right. Like the Falcons are like in their bachelor program for this offense, whereas the Rams are like, have a PhD in this offense, and like even Stafford, who wasn't in it the entire time with McVay, he's been in it for 4 years now. So he's running it even like Derek Carr in this current offense. I think it took him a little while to really get fully comfortable in it. Like Stafford is already he's a veteran player. He's a fast processor. He's seen it all. He's won a Super Bowl, and now he's 100% comfortable. That said, they do have a new offensive coordinator this year. So there have been some changes, right? And I do think, Greg Beacham talked about that. Like, on defense, I think there's been some fits and starts in terms of some of the changes. But I do think like he's like Joe's not going to go out there and be like, oh yeah, we're way better off for having played the Falcons. But I just don't see a scenario where you go against the Falcons twice and you've handled their offense pretty well, and you can't look at that and say, okay, I feel a little better about what the Saints will be able to do against the Rams than I did last year. Like, you have to. I feel better about it. Now, it's not going to solve all of your problems, but I don't think you were that far off in that game. Like, you get a couple more stops in that game and your offense executes and even kicks field goals, and suddenly that's a different game. So, the big thing is eliminating the explosive plays, and that's been something all year long we've talked about, and they have not yet been able to do it. So, if that happens in this game, it's tough again. But
yeah, I'm interested too with the Rams to see the involvement of a guy like DeMarcus Robinson. We know he got into some trouble after the game last week against Philly. But from what I'm been seeing, at least they're fully going to have him playing in this matchup. But a wide receiver 3, I guess you could say, that you just don't want to forget about. He's definitely a dangerous dude that I think he had a touchdown last year against the Black and Gold.
He's the guy who caught the touchdown at the end of the first half. Yeah.
Okay.
And
right.
I think that touchdown in terms of that game, because even if you hold to a field goal there, you're talking about a 1-score game.
Yeah.
Like suddenly going into halftime down 10. Like it felt like that was the end of the game. And that was a game that Chris Olave played through with a broken ankle. He didn't have a broken ankle. He had a pretty significantly sprained ankle, and you could that was a game he gutted through and played well in. And so that's the question on offense is, do you have enough weapons? Can you get the job done? I can't recall if Taysom Hill really did anything in that game.
I don't either, honestly. I feel like I would have if he did. Man, I remember being so sick for that game. And we did a pregame show at Manning's, and I was like, great, I'm going to get Archie Manning sick.
Oh, you were sick, like physically sick?
Oh, I was hurt. I was so doped up on meds. It was ridiculous.
Okay. Yeah, so Taysom got 2 carries in that game for 0 yards. Did not throw a pass. Did not get
not a factor.
Yeah, so he was a non-factor in that game. And I don't want to see that again. That's it. That's all I have. Anything else you want to throw in there before we move on to this non-Thanksgiving weekend?
No, definitely anxious to be back in the Dome and seeing if Coach Rizz can continue that positive momentum, because I ain't going to lie. Obviously, I'm feeling good, a hell of a lot better than we were when that other dude was around.
I hear the morale is up, but that we can't pinpoint.
I don't know. I don't know what the difference is.
I don't know. It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
And I know people are going to get on our shit too, because we said, oh, the Saints, you don't fire the coach midway through the season. Well, that Panthers game certainly sealed Dennis's fate.
Oh, I mean, I didn't say you don't. I said they don't want to.
Sure. There you go, right.
And I think Mickey still doesn't want. Like, if you gave him the option again, he would be like, no, I don't want to. But yeah, anyway, it is what it is. And we'll see. Like, again, that's why this game is important, right? Because here's the thing. There's still a lot of time for this season to get bad again.
Right.
And you gotta win a game like this, because if you don't, it's gonna get bad again real fast. Like, think about last year. You were on a 2-game win streak. You go out to L.A. on a Thursday right before Christmas, and you get dog walked, and suddenly we're right back to square one, and everything's terrible.
And yeah, fans are like, oh, same old Saints.
Exactly. Same thing with when you went out to Minnesota. You had won 2 games. You had beat the Colts, which was one of your better wins on the road. Then you beat the Bears, and then you go out to Minnesota, and you're like, here we are. We're bad again. So, and that was right before a bye week. So it's like we've been in this situation many a time. There have been so many examples of like, oh, we won 2 games in a row. We're feeling good. And then it all comes crashing down. It happened this year after week 2. Yeah. It happened last year after week 2. It happened last year after week 9. It happened last year after week 14. Like, it didn't really happen last year after week 18. I'm sorry, after week 15, right? And then you had the 2 games to end the season where it's like, oh, well, yeah, it happened when you didn't make the playoffs. But like, there have been plenty of 2-game winning streaks in the last 3 years. What you haven't had were extended runs. Because that's when you actually start to actually be like, wow, we're a decent team. We are a contending team, is because we can string wins together. Winning teams string a lot of wins together. Winning teams, playoff teams, have a stretch in every season where they're like, okay, 4 to 5 wins in a row. This is how you end up 10-7 or 12-5 instead of 8-9, 9-8. So,
plus, hopefully, the players want to say, hey, what's next for Coach Rizz in his Builder Bob tool belt?
That's true. That's true. And I also think if you're a player, you want to win. I think the players want to win Rizz the job. Like, I think there's motivation there. Like, independent of whatever the front office thinks,
yeah,
who cares? The players want he's the coach the players like, so they want to win him the job. They want to play for Rizz.
We shall see, right?
And so again, this week, huge one at home, afternoon, which is unusual. I'm still trying to figure out how my Sunday is going to work, but that's it. that's going to wrap up this podcast. Again, Saints hosting the Rams. Saints are 4-7. The Rams are 5-6. One of these teams is going to come out of this feeling like, hey, why not us? The other team's going to be like, we suck again. And hopefully that's not the Saints.
I got another W on my Rizmas list.
You go. Yeah, it's officially Rizmas season.
Exactly.
Yeah, I dig it. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Peasy, y'all.
Later, folks.